stand-up comic, great performer extraordinaire. Has written a book, Tim and Tom, an American comedy in black and white. And did he know Frank Sinatra?
Slightly, yeah.
Did he?
He toured with Frank for 14 years.
Welcome,
was the
Tom.
opening act.
Tom, are you there?
Yes, I am. And by the way, I was just standing because that's the national anthem you were playing.
Broadway.
There we go.
They have the time of their life. I saw a man, he danced with his
Man,
wife.
you had to be energized throughout your life because just anytime I hear Frank, it's like somebody shot me with Novocaine and cocaine, and I better not get into the drugs.
Take it easy, please.
Yeah.
Yeah, especially that song and all the years I toured with him, it was always fun to be with him anywhere you went. But when we went to Chicago, Larry, as you know, you're a Chicagoan.
Yeah.
Nancy, when you go to your hometown with Frank Sinatra, it's just a totally different kind of exhilaration to be at the Chicago Theater or at the Auditorium Theater or at the New World Theater or every year, the Erie Crown Theater. Every year we'd work a different place. But to be there with Frank and then have your name on the marquee in your own hometown, And then the beautiful thing about him was in Chicago, when it was time for him to come out, there would be no introduction or anything. He'd just walk out on stage and look around at the audience, and he'd say, "This is my kind of town, Chicago is," and they would just go wild.
Oh, that would have to kill him.
And
did he go to the same restaurant? Did you guys always go to Gibson's, or were there other ones?
Yeah, Gibson's, Frank, as you know, hung out till dawn. We never went to bed till the sun came up, but he stayed at the Ambassador East. Always we were at the Ambassador East. He was such a creature of habit that he stayed at the same places. If we worked the western states, Colorado, Denver, out here west, anywhere in the west, California, San Diego, we stayed at his house in the desert at Rancho Mirage and would fly out to the western states. If he went to the Midwest and we were going to do St. Louis and Detroit and Omaha and Lincoln, we would stay in Chicago at the Ambassador East and fly out each night. And then on the East Coast, it'd be Waldorf Astoria, and we'd fly out to Hartford, to Boston. So there were only 3 places in the country that he would stay. Would be New York, Waldorf Astoria, which he stayed all of his life, and then Chicago, the Ambassador East, and then, of course, his home.
Wow.
I never knew that.
I never knew that either.
Yeah, he domiciled in those places, and then we'd satellite out every night. And of course, when you went to Vegas, he'd stay in Vegas, in the hotels. But and again, I'm saying he's a creature of habit. So in answer to your question, Larry, yeah, we'd go to Gibson's one night, and then we'd when we were on the road, it was a deal that we had that once a week I would take him to dinner because, you couldn't pick up a check around him. You couldn't pick up anything. So once a week I would say, the dinner's on me. So he could bring, sometimes it'd be Jilly and, of course, Dorothy Allman, his secretary, and Barbara, and a bunch of people. So in Chicago, one time I took him to Kelly Mondeli's. Another time I took him to not Mulberry Street, to Taylor Street, to Alex Dana's place, the Rosebud.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so each time in Chicago, I would take him to a different place when it was my turn to take him out,
Yeah, geez, the Rosebud. I remember all those places.
Well, when you go to Little Italy, in Chicago or in New York, it's always got a different sort of feeling when you're with Frank. It's
Well, that's like, going in with God, especially if you go to Little Italy.
I always thought it was like, I always felt like I was an altar boy serving Mass with God,
Yes. Oh, God.
Now, you grew up in Chicago, Tom.
No,
Teresa.
Harvey, Illinois.
Well,
Harvey, Illinois, but you were on the south side, on the wrong side of the tracks. You were in you had a tough go of it as a kid, didn't you?
Yeah, Harvey is 147th South. It's a microcosm. Chicago is a suburb of Chicago, but it's a microcosm. It had steel mills and factories and 36 taverns. I lived behind a steel mill.
Did we lose him?
I had 8 brothers and sisters, and we
8 brothers and sisters.
Yeah, we were 5 of us slept in one bed.
Wow.
And as I recall from the book, your uncle had like a bar or something. He let you come in there, and your uncle was always kind of kind to you. And didn't you find out later that your uncle was actually your father? And was that the way that story went?
Yeah, well, what it was my my mom was a bartender in a neighborhood bar.
Right.
My uncle owned the bar. It was her brother-in-law. It was my mom's sister's husband, and he owned the bar. And I shined shoes in all the taverns in those neighborhoods, and I'd go to his bar last to wait for the shifts to change in the factories, and mainly because my mother was also there, and I'd sit in the corner and drink a Pepsi and watch him tell jokes behind the bar. He was Frank Polizzi was his name. He was a Sicilian, born in Italy, came over here when he was 7 years old, and he worked in factories and everything and saved his money and bought this tavern. But he also had a band called Frank Polizzi and the Venetianeers. It was, and my mother would sing once in a while on stage with him or harmonize with him. So I loved him. I mean, I was just crazy about him. He was my uncle, and I was crazy about him. And he'd tell jokes behind a bar, and I used to emulate him and tell a lot of his jokes that shouldn't be told on a Catholic school playground, So anyhow, as years go by, I realized, that I looked like his sons, and I didn't look a lot like my brothers and sisters who were more fair-haired, And I put two and two together one time when I was first finding out where babies come from. I didn't want to believe that my mom and dad did this, let alone my mom and my mom's brother-in-law. You're my uncle, So, long story short, I one day confronted him and said to him that I wanted to talk to him. I thought that he was my biological father, And he was a real tough guy. I mean, really, if you read the book, he literally took the mafia's jukebox outside and threw it on the sidewalk.
I remember that. Yeah,
I remember hearing that.
Yeah, he's really a tough guy. He feared nothing, no man, nowhere, and he wasn't a very big guy, but he was a tough guy. And so when I confronted him with this, he didn't back down from it. He said, "What makes you think that?" And I said, "Because I don't look like my brothers and sisters, and I look like your kids, your sons." And he finally said, "Yeah, it's true." He said, "Now you can go and tell the world it would ruin your mom and dad's marriage, and it would ruin my marriage." He said, "But it's true." So I never did. I kind of backed away from him then for years, and then I was very close to him, but I stayed away from him for a few years because I was very mixed up with this, and I kept this to myself. Then I went into the service, and I came home, and we became real close, and we're close till the day he died.
And that and here's the thing, Tom. It's like, your career is modeled after the old man, so to speak. I mean, that's really something special that a lot of kids don't get. Even though yours was kind of screwed up and you had to learn about it yourself, that's still, there's a silver lining there in that story.
Did he guided you, didn't he?
In some ways, he showed me what. My father was alcoholic and drank all the time and everything, and in some ways, he guided me because my father was a good guy. I say my father, Walter Dreesen, was a good guy, but he was weak and he was an alcoholic. Frank Polizzi was the kind of man that I aspired to be because he was a hard-working man. He had talent and skills, and he backed down from no one or no issue. He would. There were things about him that I liked a lot.
The best of both, Tom Dreesen. That's what I see in you when you tell that story after reading the book. Absolutely, best of both.
That made my day. Thanks.
Oh, great. Tom Dreesen's our guest. That's the great Larry Manetti. It's the PM show on CRN. We'll be back.